Hey everybody, hope it's going well in Chicago. I'm back in South Africa. I went from Chicago and New York weather back to 30 degrees Celsius. So quite nice. I enjoy the cold though, so it was great visiting you guys. Thank you so much for joining me for the workshop a couple of weeks ago. It was great getting back to the school. I'm hoping to get back later this year working on it. But as mentioned during the last day of our workshop, I am going to send you a video, this is it, of Lightroom and how to process images of wildlife inside of Lightroom. Now, couple of things. Number one, this is not a Lightroom course. This is also not a tutorial as such. This is just an idea that I'm going to throw around with you guys of what you can do inside of Lightroom with certain species and one or two maybe ideas, some inspiration, some tips, but also just keeping in mind how to keep your images looking natural. Now, I don't think I mentioned this in the workshop, but as a wildlife photographer, in my mind, what I try and do is I try and document nature. I try and show people, if you were to stand next to me when I photograph that polar bear, that lion, that orangutan, this is what you would have seen. So my idea is not to make fine art. There's a time and a place for that, and we can discuss that if you want. But for me, it's about getting the image to look as natural as possible to what I saw in the wild. Right. Now, off the bat, I'm going to just go through the first image. I'm just going to go through and give you an idea of how my workflow kind of goes. Now, right now, full disclosure, I go in and I'm kind of, I almost want to say eclectic. I go in and I know what I want to do. I know which sliders to attack to get done what I need to have done. But for most people getting into Lightroom on safaris and stuff, this is kind of the workflow that I give to them. It makes sense to me in my mind and it helps them to get a proper baseline from where they can then edit. If you have any questions on the back of this, we can discuss. You have my details. And I think that's it. Let's jump into this. So into Lightroom we go. Just going to quickly get the Lightroom open. And there we go. So these are the images we're going to go through. Just again, hopefully you can take some value for some of these as you go into wildlife. And for those of you going to the Mara, I hope you can use these as well. So first one. Now, again, I'm going out with the idea that you guys have a basic understanding of Lightroom. If not, go and do the course with Nick and the guys. But this is kind of my general workflow. So this is my raw file off the bat. We'll talk a little bit more about the bright areas on the lion in a following image. For now, though, I normally start with blacks. I work up from there. I jump to texture and come down. So in 2 minutes, this is my general workflow. I'll start with blacks. I want to define black and white. What I mean by that is I want to make sure I have pure black and I have pure white. Right. Blacks, I hold Option, grab the slider, move it to the left. Now, everything you see that's not white is pure black, right? Hold Option. I move this up until I just have, so if you watch this area here, that little bit of red shining through, that is now pure black. I'm going to do the same with white. I hold white, I move it to the right. Everything that is not black is burnt out. It's white. So I bring it down again until I just, so in this area here, you can see that little bit of pixels there. That is now pure white. Now, just by doing that, if I hit Y on the keyboard before and after, you can see it's given a little bit lighter, a bit of a pop, right? From there, I've done black, I've done white, I go to shadows. These two to me are more based on taste. If you're going for moody, you can come it down. I normally lift it up, but please don't overdo this. It starts looking very washed. Remember, shadows define an image. You want those darks in as well. Highlights in this is pretty well managed. I'm not going to take it up because I start flirting with burning the white out here. So maybe just a little bit of a lift. Before and after, coming along nicely. Right. From there, I go up to contrast, and I put that for me generally on about an 8 for wildlife. Tends to work quite well. Now, if I've done all of these, generally I don't have to touch exposure except if I dramatically under or overexposed it in my raw. So for this one, I was a little bit under, so I'll tweak that just a little bit up. And that, to me, starts looking kind of what I saw. She was in the dappled, shady kind of area. Right. Now, normally I would then come down here, texture, and I would work down. Right? I'm assuming you know what these are. If you don't, send me a message and I can do that for you. But these ones often, just as an approach, I used to go, you go slowly, 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 slowly. Okay, there's fine. With all of these, how do you know instead of 8, 12 wasn't good or better? So my approach with these used to be, and what I still guide new people in Lightroom 2 is whack it up all the way. It looks too harsh. And then you bring it back until you're happy with the result somewhere there. Now I'm on 24, right? That way, and this is the same for all 5, that way I don't leave image quality on the table. Right, that used to be my approach, and it is still cool, but as you know, this is global. So by doing it that way, I'm attacking all the different areas. The masking feature in Lightroom has changed dramatically, and it is phenomenally strong. So I've moved the majority of my editing, sometimes even this that I showed you initially, straight into masks. Now, what I want to do on this image is I want to take this lioness, and I want to push the background back a bit. So it's like conducting a symphony. I want to pull forward the high strings and I want to push back the bass. Yeah? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, select my subject, which Lightroom is just phenomenal with that. Show me the overlay. There it is. Oh, that was up. And then I'm going to invert that. So there's my background. With that, I'm going to push that back just a little bit. Not too much. It looks fake, obviously. So just a little bit back. And what I found also, and this is just a little tip you can use, is when you are building your backgrounds or when you're processing your backgrounds in wildlife, try and up the saturation a bit. Not that fake, just a little bit, right? It adds a nice bit of depth to it, right? It's looking good and natural. More than that, what I would probably do from here is I'm going to say, okay, create a new mask. I'm going to use a brush this time. I'm going to give me a little bit of do that and a little bit of that. I'm not going to go details now. This is just to help you guys out. Now, please do not do this. And the same breath, people often take cat's eyes and they just burn it out on the saturation. Little bit up only. You don't want to have your lion or your leopard looking like it's just swallowed plutonium, glowing from the inside. Bad. So just a little bit up. But I'm going to talk about that more in one of the gorilla images. So for me, that on an image would be more than enough, right? If I can do it on the same spot. So if I use the backslash key, I can go before and after. You see, that's natural. Another thing, just before we move on here, the one thing that you want to be careful of when you get to masks is you don't want someone to be able to look at your image and say, okay, I can see you did the eyes, you sharpened here, you did this. The moment someone can see what you did in your processing, I think you've lost. Keep it natural. Right, so what I did there, that was just a basic, very quick look at my general workflow. Normally, I'll go blacks up to the top, texture to the bottom, and then majority of my work gets done inside of the masks. Okay, so again, there's 15 answers for every 7 things you can do in Lightroom. So I'm hoping you can take some value from this. Diving into this. Right, next one, here we go. So now, that's the raw file. What I saw in the field is this 50-50 split of dark and light. How do we work with that? So I would again just double check my black and white quickly. There you can see the picture little coming through. Highlights, white, where are you? I just need a speck. All right, so you can see what that does. It just balances it out a little bit, more punchy, more contrast, if you will. From here, I would go straight into this. Now, what I see when I do this, let's see what Lightroom gives me a subject. I see this, does the whole thing. Not liking that, undo, right? Is you see the circle and the disconnect between the smooth and the main? Let's play with that. So I'm going to say, give me a radial gradient. I'm going to do that. Let's just tighten that up a little bit. Not to that extent. Just feather that a little bit more, right? And then I'm going to invert that. So that's for the main. Now here, I can create this frame beautifully. I might, on that hair, give me a little bit more texture to bring that out, and even a little bit of saturation. Okay, now let's make another one. Create a new mask. This time, let's do it again. Let's do radial. Just tighten that up in there. Now on this one, I might want to just lift up the exposure a little bit. Let's just see where we're going with this. Still natural. What I'm seeing here, and this is color cast in nature, it does look a little bit washed. It was late afternoon. So if you can see that, it looks a bit blue. There's a blue tint, right? So just push the temperature up a little bit. Okay, we're getting there. So before and after, it's more rich. Now the eyes again. Another way which you can do the eyes, which also works well per the time, is to put glasses on this guy. So we do that, making sure we've got those. And then from here, this works well with the gorillas, is lift up the whole bunch so that it doesn't look disconnected. You've got these 2 isolated spots on the animal. And then at the end, I am just going to do a quick brush on there again. Not too heavy there. And let's lift the shadows up on those eyes and see. It needs more than that. Okay, somewhere like that. Let's close that up. So again, I'm not trying to go over the top here. I want to keep it natural. I want to keep it rich. I want to keep it saturated. That to me would be the basic process. Now again, I would from here, most of my images right now, when I end, I run it through Topaz, either denoise and or sharpen. I sometimes use Photo AI. I find it a great way to finesse your image at the end. Maybe one of the last images I'll run through for you like that. Just looking at the individual images for now. Right, one more lion. Here we go. So this little youngster, cute. Now, from a visual mass point of view, this area at the top on the back is very visual. It's very, very visual, right? So I want to flip that around. I want to push that back and lift this up. So let's go straight there. Let's see what the subject is. Does it give it to us? That's pretty good, right? So I might want to just, no, let's keep that as. I'm going to invert that, and I'm going to push back the background, and specifically I want to drop the highlights, which is that back. See there? So you see that it attacks just the area, that. Right. Now I'm going to do it again. Give me the subject again. That's cool. And now I'm going to lift this little one up, maybe some contrast. Again, the more you do this, you'll start seeing more what you kind of look for. Okay, let's just see what we got. Can you see now how it still looks natural? You won't be able to call that I've done this, but that was very distracting. So I've just balanced out that visual energy in the frame, which is lovely. Right, let's carry on with this. This little guy's pretty cool. So I'm going to put a radial on him as well. Where's my radial? Create a new mask. I'm just going to take this out the way so you can see. There we go. Create a radial on just the face like that. I'm going to feather this a bit more heavy. And bring that in. Not too much. Somewhere there. Right. And now in that face, I want to just get a little bit more contrast, some more richness. Maybe a little bit more saturation. Okay, liking that. Yeah? What do you think? Pretty good so far, yeah? And then what I want to do is I now want to, let me just close that. I now want to look at the top and the bottom. So this area here and the top area. So I can put a straight up vignette on this. I can either use under effects, I can use the post crop vignette, which would look like this, right? A little bit obvious, especially when you get, that's just dark, that's Hallmark. We don't do that. So I want to just balance this in a bit and at the top. Now, a thought. A lot of images, what I'm about to show you is a great way to anchor a lot of your nature images. I'm going to dumb this down, and I mean this in a good way. If you look at an image, gravity is heavy, so it wants to pull your eyes down. This, what I'm about to do, stops that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I am going to give me a linear, and I'm going to pull it up from the bottom. So make it a nice stretch like that. And then I'm just going to darken that slightly. So that frame, if you will, at the bottom, that frame stops my view from dropping off at the bottom. I'm going to do another one at the top just to anchor it in. And because of the layout of the image, this feels better to me than a full radial. Right. So there we go. Quick and easy. Now, in this instance, the main area that I was worried about is this. And you can imagine if you have full light, how easy this chin can burn out. So on top of each other, there's your before and after. Let me just close the... Yeah? There's your before and after. Still looks very natural. Nothing wrong with it. Next one. Okay. So this here, it wasn't tack sharp. This was very late in the afternoon, but obviously an incredible sighting. So cropping first. We'll talk about cropping for a second here. So all my energy is in this area, right? I'm going to bring this in a little bit. A couple of options for me here would be, first option could be that. Quite powerful. I still feel, and this is a gut feel, to me it feels like on this side, there's still a bit much. So let's bring that in a little bit. Squeeze it over. That feels tighter. Maybe this, but the energy here does go here. So that's the kind of circle. Right. This one's interesting. So how do we do this? Dark light. So let's see what Lightroom finds as my subject in here. Where is it? Subject. Might find this whole thing. Right, let's go with that. And let's flip that around first and balance the background. push that back a little bit so you balance the entire frame. And like I said, saturation sometimes adds nice depth to a wildlife image. Do it again. Select the subject. Now, I want to lift the shadows on this first and see what we get. See how that balances out, but that looks washed just a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to start going more specific. I am going to go and say, come on, man, give me another mask. I am going to do a brush on this. Make it a bit bigger. Just soften the feather a little bit. So I've always got my flow around about 20, 25 and my density between 75 and 90. So I'm just going to do that and one sweep. So remember, the more you sweep in an area, the more heavy the adjustment will be in that area. Lift that up a little bit. Here we go. I'm also wanting a little bit more color in that area because the red and the tawny of the lion is quite rich over there. Right, let's see before and after where we're going with this. Okay. Coming along nicely. And then I want to get more contrast on this dude. So let's go create new mask. I'm going to do a radial on him because it seems like quite a simple. Now, what I do, I'm very, just before I do this, I am very hesitant always, just in nature, to use auto mask where I find the edges and things. In a building situation, if you're photographing down in the loop or you're going to photograph the bean or whatever the case might be, there's very distinct lines. In nature, it's not often. And I find often if you do auto mask and you try and edge it, it starts looking fake. So I'm happy normally to bleed over the adjustments such as that onto the line because it seems to, light falls over. So it just feels more natural to me in a wildlife scenario. So I am going to do that. Oopsie. There is that. Okay, I'm going to push the contrast up on just that. Let's see clarity. Why is it going outside? Just see here. See what's happening. It's doing the outside, which I don't want it to do. Okay, that's outside. That's inside. Okay, there. That's what I was looking for. I want to just make the zebra's stripes. There. That's what I was looking for. A little bit more pronounced, yeah? All right. Now, in this instance, I probably wouldn't go more. I could go and remove this, but that's easy for you guys to do. You know how to do that. But that, let's go out of this as a before and after. Before and after. So I've balanced it a bit so it's darker. That looks a little bit fake to me. This is just darker and more anchored. I can still bring in more sharpness, more saturation, but the idea of seeing one scene with two subjects and separating them, that is the point of there. Okay, so polar bear. The one thing here which is interesting is just, and one or two people asked me about this when I was there, is, let's just crop that into something like that, is the idea of having this pure white behind it. Often if you have a white subject, is how do you manage the edges on this? So I normally don't think about that too much. I just start processing and see how it comes out. Subject, let's see how it finds it. Okay, let's just go in here and see. See, so the subject finding is pretty good. Here it doesn't have it. So if you're going to go for print, just be careful of that. But for now, to do that and to lift this, okay, please no. So just lift it up a little bit so it becomes more visible. And then the texture on it. I would do that again. I would say sharpen. I would flip this around into, not sky. Well, Lightroom seems to think that's the sky. Subject again. And invert that into that, and then to start seeing how much detail you may have or not in that background. So by swinging it side to side, you can see this top area, there is no detail. So you're not going to get anything in there. In that instance, I would leave it alone, except for snow, I might just push it up a little bit. We often seem to underexpose it because of the way that the camera reads it. So Josh, if you're watching this and you're coming to Svalbard later this year, keep that in mind when you're photographing the snow. Is let's go out of that. Let's zoom in here. Just see. So you still got the disconnect, right? But still looks natural to me. That kind of what it was when we saw it. A little bit brighter on the bear, and the background still maintains integrity. Okay, gorillas. Wonderful experience. Now, the next gorilla image, when I get to this one, we're going to do a full process. Here, I just want to talk about the eyes. So with gorillas, right, the eyes are often dead. It's a dead space. Let me just fix that zoom. It's a dead space. So what you could do here is I would often go and put glasses on him like I did with the lion earlier on. So I'd lift the whole thing just to balance it out. I would do that again. I would, what did that find? I asked for the sky. Lightroom's good, hey? Create a new mask, find the subject again, flip that around, and that I would push back a little bit and give it some saturation, which works now, especially for the rainforest. So just that flip makes it a little bit more visible on the animal already. Now, just to move in here, what I would do in this instance is I would go and say this, give me a radial, and I give him the glasses, so to speak. Yeah. And then I would see, depending on how dark your subject was, can you get away with just lifting shadows? Right? Or do you need to lift up exposure? That kind of looks a bit more natural to me. Right? But now what happens, and this is the thing here, the more you take this up, the more noise you're generating, because when you bring darks back, you're pulling that noise back with you. So often when you're doing this, and I'll see, this is not the perfect example, I'll give you an idea now as well, is when I expose that up, I would normally increase my noise reduction as well to smoothen it out. See there? So the balance between noise reduction and the lift of the shadow, that kind of works in that instance. Now, I'm not presenting it like this. I'm presenting it there. So that was just an idea of how you can bring a little bit of detail back into the face and the eyes. Wild dogs work like this. These things work like this. Sometimes elephants and rhino as well in the shadows, they can also look like that. But that's one way. So you lift the shadows up or the exposure and then push the noise reduction up with it. Right. Now, this guy, let's just see something here. Yeah, this is the one I'm going to try. So let's do a full process on this guy. I'm going to crop this. Let's say I want to go to Instagram. 4x5 is the kind of size, the biggest portrait size you can do on that. So we walked into this guy, and he was just pondering life like this. So let's go straight into my masks. Show him the subject. Okay, too much. You see, there's not enough contrast difference between the subject and the background. So I'm going to have to do this. And what I like to do is do this with a brush. Reason being the following. I take my flow way down. I'm not going to use a mask. And then I take my exposure up, but then I can brush it in. So one brush, watch. If I keep on brushing, it comes in. So I can see like a painter when this thing is coming back. So let's do some at the top there, maybe one to the hand, a little bit over there, but painting over the same area. The reason I like to do it visually, otherwise I've got this red on top and I can't see what's happening. So by building the adjustment up, I've already brought more detail into that whole area. I might even do a bit more there. Right. Then I am going to go into this face and I'm going to go with these eyes specifically. Now, you can put glasses on him. What I want to show you here is by doing a new brush. And now I'm going to go very specific. I don't do this often, but for eyes, sometimes it works. I do that eye. So I want to try and stick in the lines here as much as possible. That should be it. So I'm going to lift that up, get some light in there, push the saturation up a bit. Now, if you're going in for pure quality, right, what happens here is because you lifted it up, there's quite a bit of noise in these eyes where I processed. Again, I normally do this. I max out on my noise reduction on the eyes. Why? It makes it very soft and smooth, almost watery, i.e. wet, like most of our eyes. So if I look at that, now my eyes are there. Let me hide the masks for you. That's without the masks, that's with. So this whole thing, it doesn't look fake, looks way better. What I might find is this area here, just visually, shouts for too much attention. So I can now go back and I can go and panel beat the same mask, or I'm lazy, so I'm just going to do this and just balance that in a little bit. Right, more attention on here. Now, the one thing, and I mentioned this to one or two of you, that works pretty well with these guys is, let's just zoom into an acceptable level there. If you have the fur, let's just use this area here, that works quite well if you're going for very fine detail, is you take a brush, right? And then you take your mask off and you push up the whites quite a bit. My flow and density is still low down, so I'm brushing it in. And then you paint over over all of these areas. Even though it's black, watch what's happening. You get beautiful, very natural texture coming into those areas. Watch when I turn this mask off. See what it does to the fur? It gives it a beautiful natural feel, a little bit more contrast without losing the deep blacks. Very handy little tip, that one. So let's close that, zoom out. There's my before and after. Nice shot. I did this as a black and white as well, but that's a discussion for another time. Okay, horses in Iceland. I put this one in for skies because often in Africa and shooting wildlife, especially for those of you going to the Masai Mara, skies are very important. So in an image like this was in my Iceland trip a year or so ago. Actually, Nick, we need to do an Iceland trip for you guys. We did touch base on, but I think we should do this. Just a Chicago photography classes trip to Iceland. Anybody keen? Anyway, so what I would do here, I would again dive straight in and say, give me the sky. Lightroom is phenomenal with this. Now, I would look at this and say, okay, cool. What do I want to do? My mask show a bit off. Let's see what the exposure does down. It does, but it makes it look a bit grimy. So normally with skies, especially in big sky areas like Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, clarity and dehaze. So dehaze on your sky does amazing things, right? There we go. I'm not too worried about the saturation. If it oversaturates later on, I can just drop that back a bit. A little bit of clarity into the sky, which is quite cool. Now, let's carry on. Before I say what I'm about to say, let's do my subject. Let's see what it finds me. Beautiful, right? I want to give those guys a little bit of extra contrast. I want to maybe tighten up them on texture. You guys know the difference between texture, clarity, and dehaze, yeah? Important one. If not, let me know. And then I'm going to now say, okay, cool, I want to work this foreground. So create a mask, find the subject, right? Invert that and subtract the sky. There it is. You follow that? Easy. Now, what I want to do on this, obviously saturation because it's gorgeous. There we go. And maybe a bit of that. Also, dehaze gives me a richness to it sometimes, which is quite nice. So by doing those adjustments, there we go. Let's do it on the one. Before and after. Way more rich and anchored. Again, guys, I'm not going to shoot the lights out on any of my adjustments. I try and keep things natural. I'm taking my raw film into a final product. Right. Image like this. For those of you going to the Masai Mara, you will probably see the scene. This is Dixon stoking the fire. Why did I put this one in? Oh, yes. So for images like this, the first thing you want to look at is your color balance. You see, out of the raw, messing it up. Out of raw, there's a red cast on this, and you can see this on him. For that, I would just drop that down. There we go. The cast is now gone. It's more natural. Contrast up on this works quite well to deepen it in. I'm mostly looking at him. The fire we can discuss at a later stage. What happens here, though, is if I zoom all the way in, you get a lot of noise in the dark, obviously, right? So what I like to do here, I normally would do this in denoise, in topaz, but for now, I would go like this. I would say, give me the subject. Okay, I don't like that, which means let's undo, and I'm going to ask the object. So let's do find Dixon. There he is. Invert that, and then from there, I would noise reduce that. Again, so that I don't care if the fire is smooth. I don't want noise in the fire. But what that does do is it fixes my noise area in the outside areas around him. Right. Easy stuff. Let's see where we're at. One more. The crossings. Now, these things are, let me just go to develop and fix my zoom to 100. There we go, back. Crossings are an interesting one because often you'll get dust of some sort. Now, if you have dust in an image, any of your crossing images, the same goes for mist and clouds and even water sometimes. Often with an image like this, I go, before I do anything, before I do either my recipe or go into the masks, and there's dust, I go straight to straight to dehaze, and then go up and see what there is in there. So that looks pretty good, right? So I would do that as a baseline, and now I almost see this is my raw file now, and now I can start processing. So there's a lot of discussions here. Let's start that on the crop. These two guys at the top, I quite like that this guy's full horns are in. It gives me a diagonal through the frame. I could look and say, okay, cool, this guy's chopped. Do I want it more there? Do I want it more there or there? That, to me, I'm happy. This seems more intentional than just having a piece in. Right, so I've done my dehaze, And now let's go see what Lightroom finds as the subject here. Not quite. I want this one. Because it sees this, and those are not the ones I want to look at, what do? I soften my clarity on them, and I soften my texture on them, right? So they're not as visible. Because remember, the human eye is attracted to three things: bright things, saturated things, and sharp things. So if you want in your processing to draw attention, that's what you do. You increase those things. Alternatively, you minimize them. Make it less sharp, less saturated, and darker. So with that said, I now want to do these two guys. Let's see if Lightroom can play with us and do an object selection. So let's do that. And let's add the guy next to him. Perfect. And now we can go into dehaze because I know that'll bring me texture back. I'll give it a bit of clarity on them. Somewhere there. Yeah. These guys look too dark at the bottom now. So let's go to them. And I want to make them a little bit lighter. So this is how I would kind of just play it out like that. And let's just see where we come from there to there. This feels like it could work as a monochrome, maybe. Anyway, the point of this one was that dehaze is your friend when there's dust. I think when Adobe released dehaze as a slider, they actually mentioned it was for dust and mist. Anyway, so there we go. That's just a very quick look at some images and how you can process your wildlife stuff. It's, again, like I said, this is not a Lightroom course. Somewhere in there, I hope you could find something. If I went very quick and you want more details, I love it when people tell me what questions they have because I can then go and record new videos for our Wild Eye YouTube channel answering your question. It's a win-win. I don't have to think about what I create. You win. You know what I mean? So there we go. It's my goal again is I want you to be natural. I want it to be a natural looking image. I don't want to blow it out. If you guys are keen, and please email me on this, is if you want me to do more fine art wildlife, it's a very different vibe, more black and white. But for me, and based on our animal behavior talk, I want to just have my things look natural. So I hope there's some value in it for you guys. Please shout if there's anything, and I would love to help where I can. And hopefully I will see you again later this year, and we can go deeper. Anyway, happy shooting, guys. Take care of yourself. Look forward to hearing from you, and I'll chat to you soon. My name is Gerry. I'm from Wild Eye. Bye for now.